lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And today on the show, we're going to be reviewing Prey, which was released August 5th, 2022, on streaming, Hulu and Disney+. But Rowan, before we get into the discussion, we've got some housekeeping to do today. We have to let people know what's going on behind the scenes, give them a peek behind the curtain. So, since I joined the show almost a year ago, I've been pretty adamant about consistency, making sure we had a schedule where we'd release a main episode every 2 weeks, every second Sunday, while peppering in some episodes of Now Slaying whenever there was something new in the horror world that was worth talking about.
You're like a dictator.
I'm pretty strict. I was like, consistency. I was like, if I'm going to join the show, we got to make sure there's a schedule.
Nobody's been responding to me and Mike's help signals. We've been sprinkling secret messages in the episodes. Just
there's some coded tapping. There's
no one cared. They didn't feel bad.
Yeah, no one deciphered it. But I feel like we've kind of been delivering on that schedule and hitting our stride, especially over the last couple of months. And of course, when that happens, I get a job in the television and film industry here in St. John's that demands incredibly long hours, Monday to Friday, every single week. So yeah, basically in order to accommodate my schedule and make sure I'm still the third chair on the main show and we don't have to constantly have guests kind of swapping in, to just fill up all the space.
Yeah.
We're going to be delaying our episode for Planet Terror by 1 week. So it won't be out next Sunday as per usual, but instead the one after that, which is August 21st, I'm pretty sure. But in the meantime, we're not going to be leaving you without anything, on the podcast feed. So what we're kind of planning is that we're going to have 3 Now Slaying episodes, sort of fill in the gaps. The first of which is what you're listening to right now, which is going to be our Prey discussion. The second will be the new slasher on Peacock, They/Them, which we're planning to release a little later this week. And then hopefully, if it's playing near us, I don't know, I've been kind of monitoring if it's going to actually come up, south of the border, actually get into Canada, is the new A24 release, Bodies, which right now we're planning to release next Sunday when the main show would actually release, but we'll have to figure out if it's actually in the theaters around us. So, yeah, I know some of you will be disappointed that I'm not being replaced by Willow or Jill or, some of the other great guests that we've had. But yeah, this is just something we have to do for the time being to make recording work between the three of us. And realistically, if you're listening to me say all this, you're likely cool with it anyways. You probably don't care very much. But we just wanted to let you know. And yeah, so you'll have 3 episodes of Now Slaying to fill in the gaps, and hopefully you'll enjoy them. And I don't know, maybe we'll try and get Mike on one of them or something because, that's who the people will be really missing, I think.
Yeah, that's right. They don't care about us.
No, certainly not. But, yeah, so that was a lot. So how about we just get into measuring our anticipation for what the movie we're going to be discussing today? Prey. Rowan, we've actually reviewed Predator and Predator 2 on the main show earlier this year.
Have.
So, some of our listeners might be familiar with our thoughts on the franchise, but in case they've missed those episodes, what's your affinity towards the Predator franchise?
So, big fan. I think, in those episodes I talked about, Alien, Predator, that whole universe has kind of been a love of mine, since I was a kid. I was a big comic book fan, and the movies, the comic books, I've always been into them. So I was pretty pumped about this. I'm going to go full disclosure. I still have not seen the Shane Black, The Predator.
I would say you're not missing too much there. That's a pretty bad movie, in my opinion.
I do actually plan on, I think I'm going to watch it at work tonight, but...
oh, nice.
When it came out, I feel like I was in the process of moving, so I just kind of missed it in the theater and was busy. And then it was just one of those things that I always assumed I was going to watch, and I never did. So when I heard about this one, my interest was piqued. If you're not really versed in, I guess, the behind the scenes Predator, stuff, that, these were Fox properties, and I knew this was going to come at some point because Marvel Comics, got the licensing. They bought out Alien and Predator, so...
Oh, really? Have they been releasing new Alien and Predator comics, or they just got the licensing?
So yeah, they about a year and a half ago, they started with a Alien comic, like a new Aliens comic. I haven't read all of it yet. I'm just really behind on comic book reading, but what I read, it's really good. I think if you were a fan of like the Dark Horse Alien Predator comics, this is gonna be a lot different. They've made it a lot more accessible, and the story's a little simpler to follow.
Gotcha.
But this month, this is August 6th right now, August 10th, the first issue of Predator comes out for Marvel Comics.
I wonder if that was like a timed thing, right? To kind of hype up the release, or vice versa?
I think definitely, just because this was supposed to come out like months and months ago, and they just kind of were silent about it and kept pushing it back. So, I mean, obviously, I think, Disney's like, you need to hold off, put the comic out when the movie comes out. But yeah, I was excited for it.
Yeah, no, I was also going to ask you, are you familiar with Dan Trachtenberg, the director? He's done a couple of like episodes of TV and whatnot, but his big release is 10 Cloverfield Lane, and I don't know if I've ever talked to you about that movie, so I don't know. Do you like that guy? Are you a fan of that movie? Or
So I've never seen any of the Cloverfield movies. Like, I haven't seen the first one.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know. I always have like the box set in my like Amazon cart, and I never pull the trigger. Especially now that I heard they're like remaking it, or they're doing like another installment.
Oof. I don't know if you need that, but
I think it's a remake, but I was like, oh, that means there's gonna be like another box set with this new one in. So
okay, so you haven't seen 10 Cloverfield Lane then?
No, I am familiar with his Black Mirror episode. I think it's called Press Play.
Play Test. I think.
Test, yeah, something like that. I liked that one. I wouldn't say it's like on my list of like top Black Mirror episodes.
Mm-hmm. Some people like absolutely love that, especially if they're like a big gamer. But yeah, I'm kind of similar to you, where I am a gamer, but I was also kind of like, yeah, it was a good episode,
Yeah.
It was a good one. Middle of the pack, probably,
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, this is kind of really like my introduction to this guy's, work. What about you, Colton?
Gotcha.
What was your like anticipation and for the movie and for Daniel Trachtenberg?
Yeah, so Daniel Trachtenberg, I think that's what you said, is Dan Trachtenberg, but that's all right.
I definitely said Trachtenberg.
But anyways, obviously I was kind of like the negative one on those Predator episodes that time. I was the one pushing back, saying it's not really a horror movie, saying that I didn't grow up with much affinity for those like 80s action movies and whatnot. I think I gave the first one an okay, and then the second one a nay. So I realize that's sacrilegious to some people, but I'm just not a big fan of Predator. I prefer the Alien movies, and I actually didn't mind his inclusion in the first Alien versus Predator, but like his movies himself doesn't do too much for me. But when I got the pitch for this movie, that it was going to be set like, essentially the Comanche people fighting back against the Predator, and the couple of like little like snippets I saw, because I didn't watch the trailer, but some screenshots and whatnot, I was like, all right, dude, I'm here for this. And then when I found out it was by the guy who did 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I'm a huge fan of. I think that movie's excellent. 10 Cloverfield Lane, not Cloverfield Paradox, the third one. That's garbage. But the middle entry, I think, is like excellent. So I was really looking forward to it based on the pedigree of Trachtenberg's filmmaking there, and just kind of the pitch. And so I was looking forward to this. I'm glad that we're kind of covering it, and I still don't know if this really fits as a horror movie, but maybe we'll kind of get into that discussion as we, get into it. But yeah, I guess we'll kick things over to the trailer now, and we'll return with our discussion on Prey.
It knows how to hunt. I know how to survive.
What you just heard is from the movie Prey, directed by Dan Trachtenberg and written by Patrick Asen. And the story is as follows. Set 300 years ago during the rise of the Comanche Nation, Naru, a skilled female warrior, fights the Protector tribe against the highly evolved extraterrestrial life form that has landed in her forest. As her tribe mates are decimated around her, will Naru take her place as an apex predator? Or simply become the prey? Now, Rowan, here on Now Slaying, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth spoiler-filled discussion. Now, this is a movie that's so simple that once again I'm going to say I don't know if we have much to discuss in the spoiler-filled section, but, we'll still kind of break it up, I guess, for the people. Maybe just give our quick thoughts if we'd recommend it or not before getting into, any details. I don't know if you have anything that's pressing that you need to get off your chest in the spoiler-filled section, but yeah, with that in mind, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Prey?
I was going to say, I think it was pretty interesting. I think out of all the entries we've kind of had, whether they be hits or misses, this is definitely a return to form, I think, for the series where we're back in a wilderness setting. We're really, even though we have all these, background characters, we have this colonization with the French, going on.
Yeah.
And really the main story is Predator versus Warrior. It's just really a mano-a-mano type thing, which I was pretty excited. They've been teasing that kind of the whole time anything press-wise came out about this. And yeah, obviously, I think there's, I don't think it's a spoiler because it's been all over the internet before this came out, but it was pretty cool. It's a huge indigenous cast. That was really kind of a pushing point, I think, for Hulu and Disney Plus on this. Was just I'm not sure. I mean, there's definitely never been anything I think this big with an all indigenous, pretty much all indigenous cast. Especially, with this kind of, IP.
Oh, yeah. Certainly not, in the horror world that I could think of off the top of my head. I know there was a movie there that premiered at TIFF, a year ago or 2 years ago. That was a little sci-fi movie that had a pretty much all indigenous cast as well. And then I think of, a movie like Hostels, I think.
Yeah.
It still had... the big-name actors were white, but it was still very much, I don't know, probably 100, indigenous people involved in that production. But yes, it's, by and large, this is one of the first things I can really think of outside of, some scattered things I can make the argument for, essentially.
Yeah, I really thought that you're not necessarily, wasting your time on this. I think, like I said, I think if you're a big fan of the original Predator, this might might itch that scratch a bit for you. Like I said, I haven't seen the Shane Black, the Predator, but I mean, we kind of get more and more, I feel, with the Predator series into this, kind of more PG-13 area as it goes. Even the, I think even Alien vs. Predator was rated R when it came out in the theater. And I mean, when you look at that movie now, I wouldn't think it would get much than a 14 now.
Yeah.
They're, Predator, unlike Alien, which I think is why you and I both really prefer Alien, is Predator is the schlocky sci-fi, action side of those things. And, I thought it was a interesting take on this. One thing I think that kind of separated it from the first one was I think the tone is a little more serious in this. So I thought that was kind of a unique take on it, because yeah, they're really not that serious of movies. I thought it was interesting. I feel like I'm going to save most of my comments for the spoiler section.
Oh, all right. Okay.
I don't want to spoil a lot of it, just in case you want some mystique around it. But I would say, I'll end it with saying that if you are a fan of Predator, I think, you're gonna watch this. I was gonna say it doesn't really matter.
Of course, they've already watched it if they're a diehard fan of Predator.
Yeah, if you're not so much a fan of Predator, I can see this kind of clicking. I can see this being like a fun kind of romp. This is definitely, to me, like the definition of not a theater popcorn movie, but a just, at home popcorn movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this is gonna, be too difficult for anyone to like process. So I guess what's that? That's like kind of like a medium recommend, like
Yeah.
yeah.
Not emphatically, you don't love it or anything, but you're like, yeah, I recommend it. And obviously, if you're a Predator fan, you've already seen it.
I think, give it a shot, see what you think. How about you, Colton? Just some spoiler-free thoughts, and would you recommend it?
Yeah, I would recommend it as well. Like, once again, it's a pretty soft recommendation. This movie has a lot of hype behind it right now. I think it has like a 91, 92 on Rotten Tomatoes. I have people on my Letterboxd that's given this a 9 out of 10. I'm not with those people, but when I was watching it, I was kind of like, this is pretty good. It's like, it looks like a masterpiece compared to The Predator, like the Shane Black one. That movie was awful. And then even compared to like the old Predator movies, for me, there was a little bit more in here that I enjoyed, or at least conceptually, I was like, I liked what they were going for. I don't know if they always nailed the execution. Maybe I'll just save like the specific aspects, that I'm tearing down for the spoiler section, just so, if you're just listening to see if we recommend it or not, I'm not like kind of pointing out my issues with the movie before you've seen it. But, for some good things, what I'll say is the main girl, Amber Midthunder, as Naru, she's very good in the movie. I thought she does a very good job of kind of carrying the movie and what she has to, go through. I thought the action set pieces most of the time were pretty entertaining. There's some good choreography in there. And once again, conceptually, I liked what they were going for in the action sequences. And like some of the kind of the little tweaks to some of the Predator lore or mythology or stuff like that, I was a fan of. I like that stuff. So yeah, overall, I think a very soft recommendation. I also watched it very late at night after like a 13-hour shift. So yeah, I wasn't dozing off, but what I'll say is sometimes it felt like the movie was just playing past my eyes, and I don't know if I was digesting it fully. So it might be something that I need to rewatch, but I enjoyed my time with it. It's a pretty easy watch, and I'm very much like you. I think even people that don't really like Predator would probably still take something away from this, especially like the girl and her dog sort of story,
Yeah,
So yeah, soft recommendation from me as well, and yeah, maybe we'll cut on over to the spoiler discussion. So yeah, here in the spoiler-filled section, Rowan, what do you want to get off your chest? What are your spoiler-filled thoughts on Prey? What have you been waiting to say?
I feel like whenever we do this, I'm always like, oh, there are things that like maybe you could bring up in the spoiler-free section, but I like to save it for the spoilers.
Yeah, go for it.
This movie is just a continuation of every horror fan's nightmare of why we've been screaming about practical effects.
Yeah, I agree.
The CG is pretty rough. I was really, really confused when, I'm turning this on, because at first I'm like, it's, the landscape, everything's like pretty epic. And I'm like, it's really weird this didn't go to theater. Like, The Predator came to theater. Like, all the Predator movies have been a theater movie. And it's just such a, like, sci-fi action kind of thing. And then, like, we get a CG bear and a CG moose. And, like,
yeah, I
think the dog is pretty much the only real animal in the entire movie. And they look like horseshit.
Yeah, my first note is the VFX on the animals, blood, and then the spaceship are absolutely terrible, and they stick out like a sore thumb. Like, they don't feel at world, like that they're like nestled in the scene or in the shot at all. Like, it feels like compositing issues. It feels like lighting issues. It feels just like a hatchet job, like rushed. And it was one of the big things about the movie, and that's why I said, like, I like the action set pieces conceptually, like what they were going for, but I didn't want to specify. But like the bear scene should be really cool. But it's like, bro, you're like fighting like a PS2 bear or something. You know, it kind of just looks like shit. Like it doesn't like fit right. It doesn't have like the heft to it, right? Like it's not like the Revenant or something, right? It's just, I don't know. Some of the VFX, I completely agree.
Yeah, well, and it was weird too, because it was like, especially the bear scene, like when the predator kills the bear and then like throws it into where she's hiding. And it's like the bear makes like this weird, like humanistic facial expression before it dies.
You see like the light leave its eyes and it kind of has this little like dopey. It's not a grin, but it's like almost like a sad face as it's dying. Yeah.
Like you said, I was just like, this is like an old like video game system, like just weird looking. Yeah, just weird looking thing.
Yeah. For me, like obviously I said, the visual effects are number one, a big issue with the movie. Like literally when they show the Predator ship like in the sky, they chose to like pan the camera upwards or tilt it upwards, angle it up into the sky, and then kind of go up into the sky and do like the title card and all that stuff. And I'm like, it looks like shit. It looks so bad that like I wouldn't do it in like a student film or something. I'd be like, this is too cheap looking. I'll find another way to shoot this or another way to show it. Have it nestled in some moss or some trees or do a miniature or something, you know? Like there's other ways to do it. It just looks so poor.
Well, and I thought with that title card too, like I was like, they could have even just implied, like use lighting or something, like we can see the ship, like we don't actually see it, but we see the lighting of the ship in the clouds or something, and then you're like, oh yeah, okay, like something's there.
Yeah, there was definitely a better way to do that. But moving on just from the visual effects, and like I said, the snake as well. You mentioned a couple of things, but I think there's like a rabbit. There's like half a dozen different animals in this movie, and they all look like shit. And you will know as you're watching it. Like, there's no way I can kind of get over it.
Yeah.
Anyways, but moving on from that, I thought the acting from basically the rest of the cast, other than the main girl, was pretty bad. And I don't know if it's the script. I don't know if it's just kind of like the direction. I don't know if they're just bad actors, you know, that happens from time to time. But I had a really hard time getting into kind of the rest of kind of the bickering amongst the tribe mates, or kind of like I don't know what to describe it, but almost like the unit around her. Like I had a hard time really caring at all about like the characters or what they were doing. It wasn't like the first Predator. And like I said, I'm not a big fan of that movie, but it's like they were all cliched and they were at least developed enough that I knew what stereotypes or what cliche they were kind of fitting the mold of. In this movie, it was just like very, very awkward, I found all the time with the rest of the cast. Like there was nobody I really liked or cared about at all outside of the main girl. And I think for a lot of it was just purely because of the acting. I don't know if you kind of felt the same way, but I found it pretty rough.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the acting for me. It was just, it really didn't seem like the story was that strong. Like, you know, you've probably already watched this movie if you're at this part. There's no reason that we needed like 44 minutes or 40 minutes before we get to like anything. Like there was this movie, why is this movie this long?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like a tight like 80 minutes as well when I started it, and then seeing that there was an extra like 20 minutes or 25 minutes more than what I expected, I was like, oh damn.
I get like you want to build this world, and you know, like I said, it's awesome. Like, you know, they're trying to show you like how this tribe works and, you know, all this stuff. But I mean, we know what we're here for. We know we just want to see Predator kicking some ass. And I was thinking about it and I'm like, I think pretty much all the other Predator movies, like we pretty much get into it after like 15, 20 minutes. Like it was way too long of a build up. I was really confused with like, I shouldn't say confused, but I get what they were trying to do with the French and like all the colonization stuff, but they didn't give a shit about that part of the story. Like we're kind of
no.
I knew the minute I was like, okay, we're literally not saying anything about this. Mm-hmm. There's no message here. We're not getting anything deep. I'm like, all right, so these guys are just like cannon fodder. Like we
100%.
just need bodies to kill. Which I think is like really kind of a shame because I think, with this setting, I just feel like maybe you should have gave that a little more credence if you were going to include that. Like, colonization is like kind of a big deal.
Yes, of course.
I just felt maybe you should say something more, which I'll wait. I'll let you talk a little more. I have a little bigger rant on that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, well, I was going to get into it too. I just believe there's a more interesting and a more nuanced take to the story that, let's say if there was the first time that the Comanches met, let's say the French or whichever people that are trying to colonize them, and kind of they were living right next to each other, or that people were being taken in the night. They weren't sure if it was the French or the Comanches doing it. Rising tensions, and then there's also a predator in the mix type of thing where it's like some things that happened are misdirected and they kind of confuse what is happening. Basically they're making each other the other, but then there's actually truly an other in the mix, like in an alien person, an alien creature. Like, that is a more interesting movie. And I know like people kind of hate it when well, I don't know if they hate it when specifically I do it, but lots of times when I'm watching the movie, I hate when I go like, damn, there's a more interesting angle to this, and they kind of took like the more boring aspect. It really irritates me. And as I was watching this, I was like, I was always waiting for them to kind of say something, or kind of waiting for the two worlds to collide. It just very much feels like this is the Comanche part of the story. This is the settler part of the story. A couple, lines here and there, but it's not like fully merged. That was the thing. It would almost like, I would have preferred if it was like tensions were mounting. There was almost like a war brewing. We're not going to show it in a movie like this, but it's like everything is mounting, and then it all gets like destroyed, by the predator and stuff there. And some of their hatred towards each other was just kind of misdirected or misplaced because the predator was also doing things. Like there is a better version,
Yeah.
I don't have it planned out. I never wrote the outline, but when I was watching it, I was like, there was that. And basically what they chose instead was just a coming of age story with a girl and her dog about how like, you're not a good hunter, only men can hunt, and then by the end she's the best hunter, and I was like, sure, like that's a simple story, I've seen it a million times, I was like, it was executed fairly well for what it was, but it just didn't reinvent the wheel. I was like, yeah, I was wishing for more, I guess.
It's 2022. I thought we kind of learned. I thought we were like kind of past this. I'm looking at it, and like I said, I wasn't that familiar with like what is it, Trachtenberg?
Trachtenberg. Yeah.
So I'm like looking at it, and I'm just like, I think we've learned this lesson. Like, kudos to like this indigenous story, the indigenous cast, but like, he's not indigenous. So To me, it was just kind of like, this happens all the time, like whether, it's indigenous stories or black stories, or this is what happens when, like just some white guys, making your film. I just feel like maybe if we had to put an indigenous director, maybe some of these things we're talking about, especially with like the more serious tones that it's trying to reach, might actually have more of a connect, and there might have been more built up to it, where like I said, kudos for him wanting to do this, but I just don't think maybe he had the connection to the story that maybe someone should have in that role.
Yeah, like as a writer myself and like as an aspiring filmmaker, I don't think you have to be from the community you're writing the story about. But certainly if I was writing this story, I would have wanted to collaborate and have like a co-writer that was, someone of Comanche descent or something, right? Like I would want to basically ingratiate myself in that culture and do it justice. And then very much ask like, okay, do I have to be the one to actually get the credit on this movie at the end? Or like, can I do a first draft and then they punch it up and make it like actually more authentic, right? Like there is a version where there's a collaboration here that is actually like for benefit of the movie as well. It's not just someone getting the job because they're Comanche, but it's someone who's actually a great writer working in my opinion, as someone who directed a great movie in 10 Cloverfield Lane and just elevating the whole project, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, kudos too. Like, I think I didn't find out till a couple days ago, but so apparently they did put out like a dubbing of this in Comanche.
Yeah, so I hate this aspect, but maybe you go ahead first.
Well, I feel like we're kind of gonna get to the same thing. I was just saying I was sad to see that kind of the reviews of that version have been really not really bad. Everyone's saying like, you know, the voice acting's really bad. It sounds like they're in a bedroom, and like there's just like they didn't put the like care or effort into it. It was just kind of like an empty gesture type thing.
Yeah, basically when this movie was coming out, I heard for the longest time that there was not going to be a Comanche dub, but a Comanche cut. And when you say that, there's a difference that they filmed the Comanche version is what they were saying. And I was like, cool, that'll be the version I watch 100%, the one where everyone's actually speaking Comanche and it's subtitled. I would much prefer that version.
Yeah.
Then it is basically what you said. It's a dub. It's like if you're watching anime that was, you know, written in Japanese and acted in Japanese, and then you're watching the English version, none of the mouths line up. All of the voice performances are far worse. Sometimes the heart and soul of the characters are completely lost. And I'm just like, this sucks. Like, either commit and do subtitled Comanche version, like that is great, and that was what it was actually filmed, because I mean this is only going to Disney Plus or Hulu or whatnot anyways. Like, just like execute on the vision or don't do it. Like, it feels just like they wanted to get a pat on the back for being like, we actually have a Comanche version of this type of thing, and it's just like, no, like you paid some Comanche people, you know, a couple grand to record this in their bedroom. That's what, you know, that's what you did. You know, you never actually made it part of the production, right?
I was going to say, to me, that was like kind of the big letdown. Because like you, I thought the entire time I was watching this, like, I would have had no problem watching this subtitled. I think it would have been way more immersive.
Me too. And I also think the performance issues, and this is just a thing when you're watching anything that's subtitled or in a foreign language, my performances, I wouldn't have been able to judge their performances quite as harshly because I don't speak Comanche, you know, and also when you're reading subtitles, your attention is divided to some degree, right? You got to read the subtitles and watch the performance. It's back and forth. Like, it takes me multiple watches of foreign films before I can kind of really get into the performances, right? Because you're constantly reading back and forth, right? So I just think a lot of my issues with this movie, in terms of performances, in terms of writing, in terms of some clunky dialogue here and there, it would have just been like, if it was Comanche, I think all that would basically be assuaged. I think I would basically be like, yeah, that was great. Another thing where essentially kind of getting back to no Comanche version, the fact that they never had a Comanche person in at least the screenwriting department and the writing department, certainly not in the directing department. It's just, I find a lot of the costuming looks cheap, and it just doesn't look authentic. And this is a weird issue I have with so many movies, but I hate when costumes don't look dirty when they're in a dirty environment. And it's really dumb, but it's like, costumes should look lived in. They should look grimy. They should look filthy. They should have like little blood stains on them, especially if you're a hunter-gatherer sort of community. And a lot of the costumes in this just looked like theater. Like, it looked like productions on like stage, right? Which is like, that looks usually a lot more showy. So that was a big bummer to me, especially with a lot of the posters and the screens kind of released where she was kind of had the war paint on, had some blood on her and stuff like that. I thought it was going to be a little bit more grimy. And for like 90% of this movie, everyone looks like they just gotten the makeup trailer off the shot and walked into it, right? No one's sweaty. No one's like grimy. There's no like spit coming out or anything. It's just like, I want it to just feel like you're in a different time period. And to me, this very much felt like they just dragged all the trailers to a forested area where they never had to remove like telephone poles in the background and stuff like that. And then that's also kind of what the costuming felt like to me, at least on like the Comanche people, in my opinion.
I mean, my thing with that was also, I got really excited when she got like stuck in like the quicksand mud stuff.
Yeah.
She pulled herself out, and obviously, as you know, a huge Predator fan, I'm like, oh shit, like what
all right, she's gonna be covered in mud.
What
yeah.
a great callback, like awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's just like clean like 2 minutes later.
Yeah.
And like we get this scene, you know, her by the river, which kudos, they tried to do like, oh, she cleaned herself off.
Of
but
course. Yeah.
In the river scene, she's like really struggling getting this mud off. This mud isn't like coming off the weaponry very good. And then in the next scene, her outfit is like pristine. She's dry. And yeah, like you said, like I was like, let's let's like live in this mud. Let's live in like the dirt of rolling around.
It's a hang up I've had like in movies for a long time, but specifically when I was listening to I think it was Barry Jenkins talk about at like the Moonlight, I don't know, Canadian premiere or something. He was talking about how much just like oil, they went through on the film set just to make everyone kind of look like they were hot and sweating a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Because obviously they can't actually be overheating and sweating, as actors. They're supposed to be cool and whatnot. But it's just like, it's something that's like, oh, you paid that much attention that it just feels like realistic. So now when I'm watching these movies and everyone's not sweating, not breaking a sweat, jumping over logs and sliding under things and falling in the mud and going through the river, I'm like, I want them to look like they've been through war. And for this movie, it would be cooler if it was just kind of like her body and her clothing and everything was deteriorating and getting grosser throughout the movie, and just like she was fully becoming like an apex predator. It's just annoying, it's a hang up I have on even just regular movies. So yeah, in a movie when it's like set 300 years ago, living off the land, and everyone looks like essentially their models, that they just got their makeup done, perfect war paint, that would basically be like impossible to do. It's just a little irksome, right? Like I noticed it. But Rowan, we've been just talking about all these issues with the movie. We haven't even mentioned the Predator. I don't know if you want to talk about the Predator very much. He has a new design, I think. He looks a little bit different in my opinion, and
yeah,
his mask was certainly different. What do you think about the redesign or what they were going for?
So in terms of like the mask and the outfit, I remember obviously at first I was kind of like, whoa, like this, this isn't the Predator mask. This is weird.
Yeah.
But I'm open to it. Like, I was like, yeah, like the kind of this bone thing. I was like, this is cool. And obviously, I knew coming in this was supposed to be representative of kind of, one of the first hunts on Earth that these predators do.
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, this is pretty, I can get down with that. I did have a big issue with just the shape, the size of the Predator. I was like, the first one, he's kind of beefy, like who he's hunting, and the Predators have always kind of had that bulk to them, where this guy's like really tall and like slender. I don't like to pick at it because we're talking about a made-up alien race. Like,
yes, of course,
sure,
yeah.
Whatever. I wrote a friend as I was watching it last night, and I was like, I'm not sure Dan has seen a Predator movie, because I also was kind of off-put that I guess we didn't give a shit about like his hands or his feet. Like, he's basically just rocking like human feet.
Oh, I never even noticed that. Wow.
They're like a little bigger, but they look nothing like any of the Predators' like feet ever in any of the other movies.
I never knew you were a connoisseur of like the Predator's feet. I like this development.
Same with his hands. Like, his hands are totally different than anything we've ever seen in Predator. So but you know what? Even that, I'm willing to push that to the side. Who knows? Evolution of the Predator.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But then the reveal. What the fuck were they thinking with his face?
His face looks really weird. Yeah, I agree. It is not an improvement. The Predator already looks kind of fucked up anyways. Like I've said before on our review that it's like he just kind of looks goofy to me. He's not very scary. But this one's even weirder. It's like slender and his eyes are weirdly offset, and there's something about it that when I was looking at it, I was like, it doesn't look right. There's something off.
One thing I found, and I mean, maybe it's just me, but like in the Predator movies, like the face is always kind of there, at least like the basics of the face. Like it's got a certain shape, all that kind of stuff. Where they were just like, fuck it, we're doing our own thing. And as much as I appreciate that, it really irks me. I'm just like, come on, guys. Like, this isn't your baby. This is like the world's baby. This is something that's...
You're a Predator purist. You want him to look like you want him. Yeah.
And if I saw the face and it looked totally different and it was awesome, I'd be like, cool, great. It wouldn't bug me whatsoever. But I was like, it isn't like his face wasn't as frightening or as the original face. And I didn't think he looked good. He was like red. I'm not really sure what was going on with like the red of him. I'm sure they had some sort of thought why that was, but I wasn't feeling it. How about you?
So I loved the mask. I thought the mask was really cool because you could see like the mandibles kind of like poking out of the sides near the bottom and whatnot. I really liked that. I thought it was sick. I was like, that's a great design. I'm completely with you. As soon as he took off his mask, he looked way goofy. But the thing is, like I said, obviously the Predator, what he looks like to me is like iconic, but it's been around for 40 years or whatever, right?
Yeah.
This one, and I don't like it. It's just I know what it looks like, right? This one, I was like, it's close enough that you know it's the Predator, but it also just looks like there's something off. Like it just looks, I don't want to say sloppy. It's just different. It's almost like I wish they went in a completely different direction where the face didn't look at all like the Predator, or they just kind of stuck a little bit more closer to it. That's all. It's kind of like in a gray area. I still think he looks goofy, but I think the original looks goofy. It's just, I still prefer the original, which is still goofy in my opinion. But yeah, I liked his mask. I liked kind of what they were going for. I liked, his look. I don't really care if he's super bulky and whatnot, but yeah, it was fine to me, but I did notice that he looked a little off, is what I'll say.
To me, it was just kind of the continuation of what I've kind of been talking about. My complaints for it is, the more and more I saw the movie, I'm like, the more and more it made sense why this went straight to streaming. Like, it just seemed like there wasn't time taken on a lot of this stuff and that it was just kind of rushed out. But I do want to, like, I feel like I've been harping on it.
Yeah, we've just been complaining in the spoiler section for like 20 minutes now or more, so.
People are like, this isn't the complaint section, guys. But, like, I will say, like, a lot of the action in it, like, I was pretty cool with. Like, I thought we got some cool Predator kills. We got, like, some cool throwbacks. We saw some arms cut off. We got introduced to, like, some new Predator weaponry, which I thought was a cool addition. Like, I'm always up for, new stuff. So we're not just using, like, the laser cannon and...
Yeah.
So I definitely, appreciated that. And I like that even stuff like his spear and stuff that I did like, we kind of like de-evolve some of that stuff. So we're like, hey, this is like a long time ago from the other movies. So like they've obviously upgraded their weaponry and made things look different, which I did enjoy. And like I said, I thought kill-wise, we all know I love to, look at the kills. I thought this was pretty good for a Predator movie. Like it was pretty bloody. We got more dismemberment than we've ever gotten in any Predator movie. And I'm kind of taking that word back now. I don't know if I'd say it was as bloody as I thought it should have been.
Yeah, I don't know if this was like a hard R really, but
I feel like if he wanted this to go to theater, he was definitely trying to aim at like a lower rating.
Yeah.
But I thought it did good. My expectations for that are never like overly high. But, I think the body count, like, this is probably one of the higher body counts in a Predator movie.
Oh, yeah, like you were saying beforehand, it takes a little while to get going, but it does have a lot of kills in it for sure. If you're there just to see the Predator slaughter a bunch of people, you'll definitely get it, And yeah, like one of the things I really liked, I thought the ending of the movie was really strong. I did like kind of how it was set up with like the tracking system, and I was kind of like, okay, like that's obviously going to come back and it'll be used, But I like that she had the mind that she could like kind of figure out how it worked, frame the helmet in such a way, use the quicksand pit. Like it was essentially like she was using all the things throughout her adventure to wind up, getting him in the end, right? But it wasn't like in the Black Phone way where people were like, now, Naru, make sure you remember this quicksand pit, and if something falls in it, you'll have the upper hand, It wasn't something like that. It was just like she was smart enough to do it in her own head, and I put together the pieces with what she was going to do, and I was like, cool. It was executed just the way I thought, and it was a cool kill, and I felt, I was like, yeah, that's basically what I expected with this movie. I'm a sick person, so I kind of wish they killed the dog at some point just to kind of have a downbeat very much for the character, something where it's like she doesn't have her companion anymore and she's truly lost. But, I realize for the people that are fine with killing the dog, there's also numerous people that would just shut off the movie if the dog died. So I don't
Yeah.
know. It's not necessarily that I'm against dogs or I'm not a pet person or anything, even though to some degree I'm not. It's just kind of like sometimes when you have an animal companion in the movie, you can really use the death as a really big gut punch and kind of really knock the character off their footing. And in certain movies, it works. And I think in a movie like this, it may have worked and like kind of slowed things down for a moment. And once again, just made it a little bit more nuanced and contemplative and a different movie, I guess. So
I wanted to mention, like, I really enjoyed the scene where they are like tied to the tree and that whole action set piece. Like, I really liked the look of that.
mm-hmm.
I think that's almost when, in any Predator movie, when a Predator is most effective, where we're not really seeing much of him. We're seeing glimpses, but we're seeing like the destruction and the death
the
he's
carnage.
causing.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is cool. I was like, this is really kind of getting into like that action horror territory. And I thought that was really well done. I loved, like any big Predator fan, I love we got the gun. We got that teaser of the gun from Predator 2. I'm still not sure if she killed this Predator, how the other Predators had that gun in their collection.
They came back and retrieved it. I don't know. Their friend went missing. There's a sequel to this where there's multiple Predators looking for their long-lost friend. I don't know.
I always appreciate little things like that, because that's just a little thing that you can kind of do to nod at, us people that are obsessed with Predator and be like, hey, we see you, like... we get it. We put this old gun in here. It's cool.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, is there anything you want to kind of discuss before we get on over to the rating? Or?
No, I think we can rate it.
Yeah, so if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So, Rowan, what would you give Prey?
I am going to give it an okay.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like I said, I was really anticipating this, and I was hoping it was a yay. Obviously you're always hoping for a slay, but I was like, yay, I'd be happy. There was a lot I did like about it, and like I said, when I recommended it, like, I think I think you should watch it once. Like, it's worth the time. But as I mentioned, the hour and 40 whatever minutes, like, this needed to be cut 20 minutes. There was no reason it should have been that long. I think if it had been tightened up, maybe get rid of some of the themes you didn't overly explore, or, do a better job and getting into those issues in a more quick fashion would have worked. Yeah, I don't know if there was enough Predator in this for me to give it more than an okay. That was really kind of my main issue is... We get the Predator in pretty heavy doses, but it's kind of few and far between. And it's more of just, like you said, this coming of age story, which is cool, but I'm not watching a Predator movie for any of the other characters. Like, I want to see the Predator. This isn't the first movie. We know everyone knows what the Predator is, so let's just get into it and I need an hour and 20 minutes, just Predator just fucking people up. That's what I need. So, yeah, I'll give it an okay. What about you, Colton? What would you rate it?
Yeah, I'm very much of the same mind. Coming into this, I was like, how positive on it am I? And the more we discussed it, obviously I have a lot to say and a lot of issues with it as well. I was like, is it going to be the softest of yays or just like a strong okay or whatever? Yeah, I think I'm going to lean on an okay. I think there's enough here that is just kind of irritating me a little bit. Maybe it was because I was watching it late at night and I was a little bit grumpy and tired. Who knows? So maybe on a rewatch, it might get up to that yay territory. I'm not similar to yourself. I don't need to have more Predator in the movie, but if there isn't a lot of Predator in the movie, I need to have a lot of other things to sink my teeth into, and the characters weren't developed well enough outside of the main girl that I cared much about it. All the visual effects suck. A lot of the, like, kind of authenticity, I'd want to say, or like the Comanche representation in the movie, to me kind of felt a little bit not thought out enough, like I said, in the costuming department, or the fact that there's not actually a Comanche version. All that was disappointment for me, but I still think the action's good. I think the main girl is good, and I think yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed my time with it. So yeah, I'm going to give it a strong okay, I guess, is where I'm going to fall on this one. So yeah, if you listened this far and you haven't followed us on social media already, be sure to do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Slasher, Letterboxd. Basically, if there's a social media, we're on it at It Slays Podcast, and we'd appreciate any follows or likes or whatever they're called nowadays if you tossed our way. And Rowan, go ahead and plug the horrific playlist.
Yeah, so you can go to Spotify and look for the It Slays Podcast Horrific Playlist. We have, music from horror movies that we review or horror movies that we like to get you into that spooky feeling. If you have trouble finding it, I know we had a couple people that, couldn't find it. The link tree in all of our social media has a direct link to it. So yeah, go check it out and jam on.
Yeah, so I think basically the only thing left to do is just kind of discuss what we're going to be doing next time on the show. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the next thing we're going to be reviewing is They/Them, which is the new slasher on Peacock, I think is where it premiered. So yeah, we're going to be reviewing that and releasing it a little bit later in the week. And then hopefully, like I said, bodies, provided it makes it to a theater near us next weekend. But with that, I think that basically wraps things up for this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.